Well, it's time for what is loosely another Championship Manager special today, but actually it's a concerning crisis yet again at a big football club because Sheffield Wednesday have today appointed Henrik Pedersen as their new manager on a reported 3-year deal. The former assistant takes over after the Danny Rohl saga. He left the club a couple of days ago by mutual consent. But what a strange old situation it is for Sheffield Wednesday. We will do the usual manager special stuff. We'll talk about the old man and the new man. But we have got to first talk about the dire situation this football club finds itself in. Because we've been doing this podcast since, 2019. And we've talked about the certainty that every couple of years, Chansiri, the owner, throws himself under the bus, shoots himself in the foot and does something ridiculous. We saw it in the 2021 season where they ended up getting themselves relegated. We saw it after they got promoted from League One with the Darren Moore situation, getting in Cisco and that being a disaster. The big rant at the start of the press conference when he announced him as manager. And then the fact that Danny Rohl had to come in and produce an absolute miracle to save the day. And now, just under 2 years later, here we are again. Sheffield Wednesday in crisis again. The North Stand closed. The squad threadbare. Barely any senior players, no manager at the start of pre-season, and it just looks like chaos yet again. And I really feel for the fans because they're a great old football club with a big old stadium, a lot of history, a lot of quality. And I said it last season, we were doing it in our weekly prediction shows. They got to that January stage, and with a little bit of backing, they could have been in with a right chance at the playoffs. And unfortunately, when that backing didn't come, when some of the weird statements came out from the owner, I think the alarm bell started to ring there. And while Danny Rohl, who we'll talk about his on-the-field job in a moment, while he didn't cover himself in glory in the way he handled everything this summer, as a young manager who's probably not been in that position before, it should be said that there's a common denominator here. This has happened more than once with more than one manager. And Sheffield Wednesday are back in a doom and gloom situation. The heavy favourites for championship relegation. We will be doing our pre-season prediction show for the league tomorrow. But when it comes to the weekly predictions next week and they go away to Leicester, it's going to be very hard to call anything other than a defeat, isn't it? So with the club situation out the way, I think it's a fairly vague but also pretty accurate synopsis of what's going on. It is a mess and we just have to hope there's a takeover and that the fans can get the club back, because this season almost becomes a write-off at the end of July unless they can get a new owner in before the end of this transfer window. But what they have lost is a brilliant young head coach, because Danny Rohl, what he achieved in the first season when he joined Sheffield Wednesday after that Darren Moore fiasco and then the Cisco disaster was nothing short of exceptional. The job he did there with the squad that he had that didn't suit his style of football was beyond impeccable. He produced a miracle, became incredibly popular. And then last season, as we mentioned, full pre-season under his belt, a little bit of backing improved the squad. And he started the season pretty decently. Around January time, they were on the outskirts of that playoff push. It looked like they had a genuine chance. But then no backing with one of the older squads in the division. Didn't have that freshness. Didn't have that new impetus to push them towards the playoffs, where other sides did improve and bring people in. And unfortunately, they fell short with a mid-table finish. But given the squad that they had, given the situation inherited, and given some of the off-field circus that always continues around them, the job Danny Rohl did for me, I've said it for about a year and a half in the weekly prediction shows. I think he is probably, or was until this week, the best young coach in the EFL. I said it when Luton sacked Rob Edwards. I would have done anything to get Danny Rohl in. And I think the first championship job that comes up this season, he'll probably be the favourite for. And that speaks volumes for the job he's done there. A brilliant effort, a nearly 40% win rate when you consider that the side he took over at the start of the season before last, around October, quarter of the way in the season, had 2 or 3 points, haven't won a game. And Danny Rohl's got nearly a 40% win rate. Did a remarkable job. In terms of his coaching, the way he sets his teams up, the way they performed, I can't speak more highly of him. Probably didn't handle himself perfectly this summer, but you can understand why he wanted a way out. But look, he's not been in that position before, and hopefully for his sake, he won't be again. That then leads us on to the new man, who I feel incredibly sorry for, because Henrik Pedersen, no, not that one, Bolton fans, has got the unenviable task of, one, following a miracle act, secondly, following in the footsteps at a time where the club is at its weakest, with several players either not contracted, have left the club, some players moving on down the divisions to get away from it, And now in a threadbare situation with a week and a half to the season to start, obviously had that bizarre situation where he started pre-season training the team. Then Danny Rohl came back after the hiatus and trained the team. And now it's Pedersen again. It's a very strange situation. The players that are left, of course, incredibly loyal in some circumstances and some that have built themselves as favourites at this club. But you're asking an awful lot here. There was a little statement from Pedersen this morning, which did worry me a little because there was very little about football in talk. Obviously, clearly from his point of view, he's got to do his bit to try and get the fans back on side. He's asking them to get behind him. He's talking about how much he loves the club. But when it comes to the footballing style and getting the club back on track, the analogies and the hyperbole with rough waters and Vikings and stormy seas is maybe pushing it and stretching it a little. But look, he's encountering an almost impossible job, just as Danny Rohl did 2 years ago. But this is a club in even more turmoil where some of the stadium can't be opened. A lot of the playing staff are gone. Obviously, the leader from the dressing room, from the coaching staff has gone. And even in his statement, he talks about the academy kids who I would imagine are going to be featuring at least on the bench a bit in the early stages this season. We'll talk about him in a minute, but firstly, let's talk about the Sheffield Wednesday squad, because of course, at this time of recording, there haven't been any injured this summer other than a couple of returning loans, and so many key players have left the club. Gassama, starring for Rangers last night in Europe, he left the club, got a little bit of money for him, but all the others pretty much free transfers. You've seen the likes of Josh Windass move to a fellow championship club, Callum Patterson, big figure in the dressing room, moved on to MK Dons. 2 players gone to Preston, who you would have thought would have been one of those teams that they'd be looking to compete with to avoid relegation this year. And then other players moving on as well. Still uncertainty over the contractual situation with some of them. Barry Bannon obviously training in pre-season without a contract. It's a bit of a mess, isn't it? So there is no doubt that the club and the squad is at the weakest position it's been for a very long time. And, well, they're threadbare. If they get 4 or 5 injuries, they'll be relying on a youth team to name an 11. In terms of Henrik Pedersen himself, though, I worry because he's had an okay record at certain times when managing in his homeland and in Scandinavia. However, the one time that he stepped out from the comfort zone and went and managed abroad in Germany at Eintracht Braunschweig, it was, look, an unmitigated disaster. There's no way of getting around it. He managed 3 months, got sacked in October. It was almost identical to Cisco's spell at Sheffield Wednesday, ironically. Only managed 2 wins, a 14% win rate, and was out the door very quickly with very few kind words said about him. So, look, he's a man who is not really experienced or qualified for this job. Yes, he knows the squad well. He'll have the respect of the dressing room, which is something. But what's he supposed to do? Seriously, what is he supposed to do? Unless they can find a way to start operating properly again, they're in big trouble. We've obviously seen at the back end of last season, a lot of players weren't being paid on time or at all in some cases. Are people really going to want to join that situation even as a free agent? We're just left with a club that's in a mess, and it's such a sad state for them to be in. And I really feel for this manager because I don't think if this had happened and Sheffield Wednesday were in a normal position, say none of the stuff had happened off the pitch, but Danny Rohl had been poached and they'd gone for Pedersen, I still wouldn't have backed them to do very well this year. But I do feel for him the task he's got because, look, it's a job he has to take. It's a position that he feels like he's got to try and take advantage of. He can only succeed, really, because if he finishes bottom of the league, everyone expects it. If he does anything else, it's a miracle. But I don't envy the task he's got there. I'm sure the Sheffield Wednesday fans will back him, but there's probably going to be less fans in the stadium. Some will be boycotting Chansiri. There's not going to be as much revenue coming in. And the only hope really is a takeover. And then if that happens after a poor start for Pedersen, is the poor bloke going to lose his job anyway so they can get an experienced manager back in or beg Danny Rohl to come back? I don't know. It really is an impossible situation. I feel for him so much. And the problem with this situation in particular, looking at what seems an inevitable relegation battle for Sheffield Wednesday now, is you look at their starts of the season and it is all of the important games. Let's write off the first game at Leicester where we will expect them to get beaten. But after that, a League Cup tie away at one of the top League One clubs, which may well be a bit of a surprise. Then you look at their run. They play all of the 3 promoted clubs who look pretty strong before mid-October. They've also got home games against QPR, against Swansea and against Stoke, and go away to Portsmouth. All sides that finished in the bottom half last year, bar Swansea after that late finish. sides that you would expect to be in the bottom half this year, and sides that the bookmakers have finishing in the bottom third alongside Sheffield Wednesday. So all of those crucial games you're going to be going into with hardly any players and a squad that's just not integrated at all. It's such a difficult position. And sadly, I hate to say it, but it feels inevitable that Sheffield Wednesday will be returning to League One. But the main thing, and look, this is the genuine note here, forget about the relegation, forget about whether Sheffield Wednesday will stay up, whether they'll sign players, whether Pedersen will succeed this year. The most important thing, because we've seen it happen to big clubs before and established EFL clubs, the main thing is that Sheffield Wednesday get a takeover, get stability, and have a club to rebuild. That is the only important thing, because it looks like this is heading in a direction that so many have gone before. And let's just hope it doesn't get to the 11th hour. That's the most important thing. So I genuinely wish the Sheffield Wednesday fans luck with getting the takeover sorted, getting some stability back at the club. We normally ask at the end of these episodes whether a manager sees out his contract, whether they'll succeed or not. It feels like there's no point in doing so because he hasn't got the opportunity to succeed. Success for him would be keeping this club afloat and keeping competitive at this point, because they have by far the weakest squad in the division left now. He's following on from a man who overachieved anyway with what he had at his disposal. He isn't qualified for the job based on his history. And the squad that he's been left with, well, it's not even a squad, is it? The team that he's been left with is not capable of competing over a 46-game season, because even if that 11 produces really well for 15, 20 games, they're going to get 5 or 6 injuries at some point in the season, and there's nothing behind it now. There is nothing left behind the 11, 12, 13 senior players. It's a really dire, sad situation. It's such a shame that we're reporting on more Sheffield Wednesday chaos, more Chansiri shooting himself in the foot. I do feel for Henrik Pedersen. I really feel for the Sheffield Wednesday fans. But sadly, to give you a bit of a spoiler for tomorrow's championship prediction show, I feel like relegation as it stands is inevitable. The only hope is a takeover in the next 4 weeks and a lot of new signings very quickly. That's my quick introduction to Henrik Pedersen at Sheffield Wednesday, a man that I feel incredibly sorry for at the moment. Sheffield Wednesday fans, what do you think? How do you feel about the whole situation? And will you be one of those still in the stadium, or are you keeping your money away from Chansiri as well? If you're another championship fan, do any of you think they've got a chance? Do any of you think Sheffield Wednesday can produce a miracle here? It really is looking like a doom and gloom situation, so it does seem inevitable for now. Let us know what you think. Remember to join us tomorrow for the Championship pre-season prediction show. If you haven't seen them already, our League 1 and League 2 shows are both live and up in the eye above, as are several Championship manager specials from the summer so far. We'll also be back next week with the National League, the Irish Premiership, and Match Week 1 from the Championship, where we'll have our score predictions every single match day as always. Come and join us for those next midweek. For now, though, thank you very much for watching. Good luck to Henrik Pedersen and Sheffield Wednesday fans for this season. I genuinely hope you find a solution to this situation, because unfortunately, it seems pretty dire at the moment.